Was going on in China, Wuhan, and specifically, it seemed to come mostly out of there, that area, the province. And when I saw that, and I saw the kind of death they were, talking about on television, in the papers, and I started reading a lot about it. And really, when I had to make a decision, do I stop people from China and specifically that area, but from China to come into the country? And everybody was against it. Almost everybody, I would say, was just absolutely against it. We've never done it before. We never made a decision like that.
Did somebody come to you with a bit of information, a piece of data? Was it a world leader? Was it a member of your own team?
It was instinct.
What was it?
We had a large group of people right behind me in the open. I don't know if he knows what that means, but that's okay. He said it's racist, what I did. Thousands and thousands of more people, probably tens of thousands, would be dead right now if I didn't make that decision. And I must say, doctors, nobody wanted to make that decision at the time. It was very, very early. Call it luck or call it talent, it doesn't matter. We made a great decision. I took a lot of heat from China. They weren't happy with it. Now they understand it. They've really, we're doing just fine, but they were not happy with it. I took a lot of heat from a lot of people.
Bring the conversation to present day. In the past day and a half, you got a lot of attention for this. A tweet that I think went out late at night. You said we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself.
I really didn't get.
So you start to look at this 15-day period, which will come to us. Day 15 is next Monday today, arguably day 9. What are you trying to gauge as to how you can open the country back up again?
When you say I took a lot of heat for that, essentially, I really didn't. I mean, a lot of people agree with me. Our country is not supposed to be, it's not built to shut down. Our people are full of vim and vigor and energy. They don't want to be locked into a house or an apartment or some space. It's not for our country. We're not built that way. And I said, I don't want the cure to be worse than the problem itself, the problem being obviously the problem. And, you can destroy a country this way by closing it down, where it literally goes from being the most prosperous. I mean, we had the best economy in the history of our country 3 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden we're supposed to shut it down. And then we're supposed to pay people not to go to work. We never had that. We used to pay people to go to work when we had.
But this is a government order to go ahead and stay home. It's tricky, though, when you try and turn the faucet back on.
It's very tricky.
New York could be different from
It is.
Utah. Louisiana could be different from Arizona. So how do you go about making that decision here?
Well, you have to make the decision. Look, we lose thousands. I brought some numbers here. We lose thousands and thousands of people a year to the flu. We don't turn the country off, every year. Now, when I heard the number, we average 37,000 people a year. Can you believe that? And actually, this year, we're having a bad flu season. But we lose thousands of people a year to the flu. We never turned the country off. We lose much more than that to automobile accidents. We didn't call up the automobile companies and say, stop making cars. We don't want any cars anymore. We have to get back to work. Now, with all of that being said, it's incredible what the American people have done. And honestly, the American people have learned. We've all learned together between the shaking of the hands and the washing of the hands. Well, I used to wash my hands, and I always wash my hands a lot. I never was a big believer in shaking hands. Once I become a politician, you shake hands, and you get a little bit used to it. Like, immediately when I see you, I sort of apologize that I'm not shaking your hand.
We exchange air elbows, which seems to be the thing to say.
I never like to see that, actually. But
right now on Capitol Hill, you've got members of the Senate debating a $2 trillion bill.
Yeah, more than that.
Did you think that it blows away the ability for us to imagine that they could pass legislation in excess of $2 trillion. Right. Now, who knows what's behind the curtain there? Who knows what is stacked into $2 trillion? How much concern do you have?
Well, we canceled the deal.
You could be facing criticism that President Obama faced in 2009 about sweetheart deals for certain companies, as Democrats would argue.
I canceled the deal last night. I said, I'm not going to sign that deal because Nancy Pelosi came in and put a lot of things in the deal that had nothing to do with the workers, that had to do with an agenda that they've been trying to get passed for 10 years. And I came in, I told Mike, I told a lot of people, there's no way I'm signing that deal. I was getting calls from John Kennedy, from Ben Sass, from many, many people. Lindsay, I was getting calls from a lot of different people saying this deal, Tom Cotton, this deal is terrible, what they've done. They took a deal. You know, we almost had a deal the day before, and it was between Schumer and Mitch, and it was really a good, solid deal. All of a sudden, they start throwing all of the little Green New Deal stuff in, right? And the boardrooms, what they look like, and we want green energy. We want all this stuff. Let's stop drilling oil. They had things in there that were terrible. Windmills all over the place, and all sorts of credits for windmills that kill the birds and ruin the real estate, right? A lot of problems. I mean, a lot of problems. And I said, I'm not signing this deal.
With $2 trillion,
now they've renegotiated.
It's hard to avoid some of those trapdoors, you could argue.
But we have great things for not only companies, forget the companies. The companies are nothing other than they are an employer of thousands and thousands of people, and they pay them very well. We want to protect our workers. I want to protect our workers. Workers first. But you have to protect companies like Boeing. They had a real bad year, let's face it, with the problems, and they were in trouble before this, and then all of a sudden this happened. We can't lose a Boeing, and we can't lose some of these companies. And companies, frankly, Bill, that were solid as like AAA companies, because of what's happened over the last couple of weeks, they go from AAA to being like they could use a hand.
Tough time.
We can't, right, we can't lose those companies. If we lose those companies, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs, millions of jobs. The faster we go back, the better it's going to be. We have a pent-up energy that's going to be unbelievable. We're going to bring it back fast. I really believe that.
I've got a lot more questions,
Sure.
and so does my colleague Harris Faulkner. I'll allow her to rejoin the
She's
conversation
great.
now. Harris.
Do I have an earplug here? I don't have
I'll help you out.
If
with
I
that.
could do that.
Go ahead, Harris.
Hello,
I'll
Mr.
relay and
President.
translate.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. President. So good to see you today. This will be a little bit to relay. I understand you guys are going back and forth on the economy and employers, but more than 66% of people are employed by small businesses. The VP talked a little bit about this. We hear you dropping big companies' names. The question here is, how do you shore up both as you look forward?
Yeah. The question's a good one, and it's pointed. You're talking about Boeing, and yet you've got, what, 2/3 of American businesses are small businesses.
Right.
And you think about what they're trying to do in terms of adjusting to this new reality that's been thrown on them. What will you do for small business?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to say that Harris is one of my favorite people. And I didn't hear a word she said, and I was hoping it wasn't too devastating a question. But she is a fantastic person. I have to say that, okay? Now that I've said it, because I can't hear Harris. But no, the bill is very much focused on the small business person. It's very much focused on small companies, including restaurants and all sorts of small companies. And what people don't realize, you know, you talk about these massive, we have the greatest companies in the world. You add them all up, and the small businesses are just about equal in size to these massive companies, of which we have many also. It's the engine of our country, small business. This bill is absolutely aimed at the small business and the worker and the workers of those small businesses and the owners. The owners are going to need help. They're going to need some loans. They're going to need things, and we're going to be able to take care of them because we don't want those small businesses to go out of business, nor do we want the big businesses to go out of business.
When they said, Mr. President, we got to shut this down, how hard did you push back?
Well, I'll tell you, I never heard of such a thing. We've had flus where we lose 36,000. We've lost as many, I guess, as 78,000 people in 1 year. And they came in and they said to me, sir, we're going to have to close the country. I said, what are you talking about? Well, we have a virus. It's coming in. And I knew that. And I made the early decision with China. So I already closed it off to China. And that was a long time before they came in. But they came in, experts, and they said, we're going to have to close the country. I said, we've never closed the country before. This never happened before. You're saying, I said, are you serious about this? We are going to take this country that's fully employed, where we have 160 million people working, and you're telling me we have to close it? And people are going to go out of business, and they're going to go bankrupt, and they're not going to have jobs? What are we talking about here? Don't forget, this has never been done. We've had flus before. We've had viruses before. So this is something new. And this is why I say we have to, I gave it 2 weeks, and you know, I guess by Monday or Tuesday it's about 2 weeks, and we'll assess at that time. and we'll give it some more time if we need a little more time. But we have to open this country
But when
up.
they came to you and had that conversation with you, how long did it take you to accept that new reality?
Well, look, I accept things. I understand things very quickly. I mean, I understood exactly what they were saying. But we can socially distance ourselves and go to work, and you'll have to work a little bit harder. You can clean your hands 5 times more than you used to. You don't have to shake hands anymore with people. That might be something good coming out of this. Although I must tell you, as a politician, it's a lot warmer when you walk into a crowd and you're shaking a lot of people's hands. You love those people.
I'd agree with you.
They love me and I love them, you know, but it is a little bit colder. But you won't be shaking hands for at least a while, and things will happen. But we have to put the country to work. Look, you're going to lose a number of people to the flu, but you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. You're going to lose people. You're going to have suicides by the thousands. You're going to have all sorts of things happen. You're going to have instability. You can't just come in and say, let's close up the United States of America, the biggest, the most successful country in the world by far. You know, when I came in, when I was elected, and you knew this number, China was going to overtake us in the year 2019. It wasn't even close. We went way up, and they didn't. We've done great. They pay us a fortune in tariffs and everything else, and yet we have a good relationship with them. We just signed a trade deal. But we're the #1 in the world by far. And now a few people walk into the Oval Office and say, sir, we have to close up the country.
And
I said, what are you talking about?
And that, Mr. President, must have been a very difficult thing to accept.
One of the most difficult decisions I've ever made, because I knew that when you do it, as soon as you do it, you're going to drop. I mean, they're talking about 20 or 25 points of GDP. Nobody's ever heard of 25 points. If we went down a point, that's a big deal. Now, all of a sudden, you're basically turning off the country. I said, this has never been done before. What are you talking about? But we understand it. You have hot spots. But we've had hot spots before. We've had horrible flus. I mean, think of it. We average 36,000 people, death. I'm not talking about cases. I'm talking about death. 36,000 deaths a year. People die, 36 from the flu. But we've never closed down the country for the flu. So you say to yourself, what is this all about? Now, it's never been done.
How did you process that?
Not good. I wasn't happy about it. And I also knew that I had to do it because, look, with Turkey, I give this as an example, and Syria, I said, sign a deal with the Kurds, make peace. Erdogan, he didn't want to. He's a man who loves Turkey, and I have a very good relation. I said, sign a deal. He didn't really want to. The Kurds didn't really want to. And it went on, you know, the so-called safe zone recently, a few months ago. I said, sign a deal. Do me a favor, sign a deal, get it done. They didn't really want to. All of a sudden, they start fighting. And it was vicious, and other countries got involved. Now I say, let's sign a deal. They said, okay, we'll sign a deal. We needed a period because I don't think, if I would have not done it, we would have been unbelievably criticized for not doing it. But it's never been done before.
One more.
Bill, somehow the word got out that this is the thing we're supposed to be doing. Now, we've had some really bad epidemics and other things. I mean, with going this pandemic, but we've had bad epidemics. I'm sure they could have been called pandemics. But we never did a thing like this before. But I had to do it. It's been very painful for our country and very destabilizing for our country. And we have to go back to work much sooner than people thought. And people can go back to work, and they can also practice good judgment.
One last question, then we'll get back to our viewers here, too.
Okay.
A month ago, the CDC had an initial test that failed. At that moment, late February, you said it's perfect, and it wasn't perfect. So what happened there in the early stages?
Well, what I said
in late February?
What I said is perfect was my conversation with the head of the Ukraine. That's what I really said is perfect. Okay, that was another whole scandal nonsense, a total, you know, witch hunt. But this one is a much different thing. We had other administrations, not just the last one. They built up a platform. They built up a test. But the test was no good. it didn't handle large numbers of people. It was okay for a very small group, but not for a large group. So we had to break it down.
Did the CDC screw up, or did you screw up?
No, we did not screw up.
Where did this
And
go
I don't
wrong?
think CDC screwed up either. They had a test that would have worked for a small group of people. In other words, for a normal problem. I don't think anybody could have, in all fairness to CDC, and this is a big government agency, and they're very good people in there, but nobody ever expected a thing like this. Nobody would say that millions and millions of people would have been tested. So what we did is we broke that egg, we broke that system, and we've created a new system that now we're doing unbelievably big numbers, and it's set for the future should we ever need it again. I hope we don't need it again.
Thank you for your time. We're going to bring the others in as well in a moment. Thank you for being patient. We will get to you. We have so many questions, not only from our network, but from millions of people all across the country. So your questions in a moment here as we continue live in the Rose Garden at the White House with the president and his task force in Washington.